3 spine-chilling true security guard experiences, unexplained terrors exposed in haunted locations. Carl grimaced as he entered the old high school, its crumbling brick facade looming against the moonlit sky like a haunted relic. This was the place where hushed whispers warned of a missing teacher whose spirit was said to wander the halls. But jobs were scarce, and despite the chilling tales, Carl needed this graveyard shift. With his daughter depending on him, he cast aside the folklore. Ghosts didn't pay the bills. The flickering fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting unsettling shadows that danced along the dusty walls. Alone in the echoing silence, Carl's heart raced each time he heard the faintest creak of the aged structure, as though the building itself was alive, breathing out its past. He gripped the walkie-talkie, hoping for some reassurance, but the static hiss sent shivers down his spine. He chuckled nervously to himself. Just a broken radio, right? Then came the footsteps. Distant but distinct, echoing from the football locker room, an area long whispered about in town. Carl's breath hitched. Still, he told himself to relax, probably just a raccoon or something. He forced a smile, but the uneasy feeling built inside him like a storm cloud ready to burst. He clenched his fists, the weight of the night pressing down heavier with every tick of the clock. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The footsteps grew louder, and as Carl moved toward the locker room, a door slammed open by itself. Panic surged through him. It wasn't just his imagination anymore. With shaky breaths, he ventured inside. The air was thick with a lingering dread, cool against his skin as he peered into the darkness. He didn't want to believe. He didn't want to see whatever was lurking there. Suddenly, the lights flickered violently, illuminating a shadow in the corner. A figure, indistinct and shimmering, hovered just out of focus. Carl felt ice run through his veins. Every instinct screamed for him to flee, but thoughts of his daughter anchored him. Could he leave without uncovering the truth behind this unease? He turned slowly, adrenaline coursing through his veins, aware that the energy in the room shifted. Doors rattled, whispers licked at his ears, and he realized this high school held secrets deeper than ghost stories. His own family connections crept into his mind. What had happened here? Who had vanished, and why did it feel so personal? Palms sweating, Carl backed away slowly, pulse pounding wildly. Shadows flitted through the corners of his vision, and in that suffocating moment, he knew whatever haunted these halls had its sights set on him. What would he discover if he dared to face it? The figure reached out, and Carl felt the oppressive weight of the unknown squeezing his chest. What lay ahead in the dark? Would he find the path to protect his daughter from this menace, or would he be consumed by the very horrors he had dismissed? The figure shimmered closer, and Carl felt his stomach drop like a stone. It hovered, head tilted as if studying him, and in that fleeting moment, Carl thought he saw familiar eyes glinting in the darkness. No, he whispered, his voice barely escaping his lips. It couldn't be. The lights flickered again, and he stumbled back, the crunch of broken glass beneath his feet snapping him from his daze. He glanced down, and there it was, a small, framed picture laid amidst the debris, the glass shattered but the memory preserved. It was a faded photograph of a family, a woman and a daughter with hauntingly similar features to his own. An ice-cold shiver crept down his spine. Just then, the whispers grew louder, wrapping around him like icy tendrils. Help, who are you? Carl gasped, his heart racing as sweat dripped down his temple. The figure's form swayed, a ghostly apparition dancing in the dim light. As if sensing his fear, it stirred, gliding towards him, a wretched aura swirling like smoke. Stay back! He shouted. But the words felt weak, feeble. The creature paused, and for a long breathless moment, time stood still. The air tightened, stifling, making it hard to think. With sudden clarity, Carl gripped the edges of the locker room doorframe, grounding himself. Unlike the legends he had brushed off, this entity seemed shaped by a deeper sorrow, a tightness twisting his heart. Perhaps it wasn't malicious, perhaps it was lost just like him. "Please just show me what you want," he stammered, grounding himself in an unexpected surge of determination. He couldn't let fear win. He owed it to his daughter to face this horror head-on. The figure hesitated, its form shifting like a ripple in water. Then, in a swift movement, it pointed toward a faded trophy cabinet in the corner, untouched but coated in a thick layer of dust. As if compelled, Carl stepped toward it, cold dread swirling in his stomach. What he hadn't noticed before was a nameplate partially obscured by grime, Miss Annabel Carter, the missing teacher. The initials tugged at his consciousness, pulling memories from the very depths of his mind, stories from his own childhood, whispered about after school on the playground. "Why?" he murmured, leaning closer to read a plaque dedicated to her that seemed like a memorial. Suddenly, a new sound emerged from behind him, a soft, desperate sob echoed in the silence. Carl spun around. The locker room felt like it had expanded, swallowing him whole. "Is someone there?" he shouted, backing into the cabinets, heart pounding and thoughts racing. From the shadows, another figure emerged, smaller yet just as spectral, a child, her expression twisted in fear and sadness. "Help us," she pleaded, and just like that, a wave of icy terror washed over him. Not just a teacher had vanished, but a student too. Were they linked? Were they trying to tell him something? Carl felt the weight of something profound settle heavily on his chest. His mind raced. How was he going to fix this? What were they trapped in? Frantically, he tried to piece the puzzle together, with the nameless dread clawing at him from every angle, desperation mingling with the haunting weight of grief. The lights flickered again, harsher this time, and suddenly, everything plunged into darkness. The whispering voices morphed into echoes of despair and wrath, swirling around him as panic seized him. He reached for his walkie-talkie, but where was it? He couldn't breathe. In the suffocating blackness, he steadied himself, trying to push through the overwhelming fear. His senses were heightened, he felt the cold air thickening, shifting with intent. "What do you want from me?" he shouted, his voice breaking the silence like glass shattering. A low murmur wafted through the air. "Uncover the truth or be lost forever." The dread wrapped around him, churning in his gut as he realized the stakes just skyrocketed. The figures were more than spirits, this was personal. What connection did they have to him? What truths lay buried in this cold, haunted space? With his mind racing, Carl steeled himself against the darkness that loomed. He was about to embark on a treacherous path. But one thing was clear, the night had only begun. The darkness pressed in, heavy and stifling. Carl's instinct screamed at him to run, but a tether of something deeper held him in place. The shadows twisted, whispering his name in voices that felt ripped from lost memories. "Carl, help!" He shook his head, forcing himself to focus. "No. You're not real." His voice echoed, swallowed by the oppressive silence. He thought of his daughter, and a flicker of determination flared in his chest. He wouldn't let fear dictate his actions. He had to find out what these spirits sought. With cautious steps, he advanced toward the cabinet, his pulse thunderous in his ears. The child's hollow gaze tracked him, her form shimmering in and out of the blackness. "Please," she implored, her voice a haunting lilt. "Find her." He could feel their pain, a choking sorrow unraveling around him, coiling tighter. "Find her." "Find who?" "Annabelle." He took a shaky breath. The name had an echo, weight, a distressing familiarity. Suddenly, the whispers rose again, louder this time, overlapping one another like a cacophony of anguish. "Uncover the truth, uncover the truth." Their pleas clawed at Carl, digging deep into his consciousness that he needed light. The darkness enveloping him was suffocating, and every second felt like it could unravel him. He fumbled at his pocket for his phone. His hands shook. Where was the flashlight? Panic gnawed at him, and time rushed forward. Clenching his jaw, he forced himself to stay calm. He could still hear the child's whispers floating through the air. "Help us please." With a sudden flick, the screen illuminated his surroundings. The dim light spilled forth, casting long shadows across the locker room. He shone the light across the dusty trophies, tracing the nameplate of Annabelle Carter. An overwhelming chill swept through the air, sending shockwaves of dread cascading down his spine. "Why are you trapped here?" he said, his voice barely above a whisper. The air thickened. The child stepped closer, eyes brimming with tears. "We were taken lost because no one thought to look for what?" Carl thrust the light toward her, searching her face for clues. "Find the music box." She pointed, her small fingers shaking, trembling as if the very idea terrified her. "It will tell you. Where do I find it?" Carl felt his heart quicken. A part of him wanted to turn and run, but another pushed him forward. "Below," she breathed. "It's where the spirits linger underneath." He spun around, darting his eyes across the darkened room. Below? What could possibly be down here? The old school was riddled with hidden paths and haunted memories. Instinctively, he turned toward the heavy doors leading down to the basement. Just as Carl took a step toward them, the lights flickered again, revealing spectral figures swirling in and out around him. Desperate whispers heightened to a wail, a storm of sorrow as dozens of lost souls clawed at the edges of his sanity. "Help us! Help us!" they cried as the chaos enveloped him, swirling shadows pulling him in every direction, grasping for attention. "No, stop!" He shielded his eyes. The cacophony threatened to drown him whole. Suddenly, everything went silent. The shadows froze, and Carl felt a pulse, a presence at his back, sending shivers racing down his spine. A chill crept over his shoulder, a whisper curling in his ear, the music box. With newfound resolve, he took a deep breath, pushing aside the panic. He needed to go beneath. Underneath this haunted gym lay not just secrets but possibly a way to set the spirits free. Before he could hesitate, he bolted toward the basement doors, desperate for answers. As he stepped through the threshold, the air grew thick with anticipation. The dampness enveloped him, the darkness seeming to pulse. He could feel the weight of eyes watching him, expectant, hopeful. Then the world went black. Shivering breaths escaped his lips, and he stumbled further in, just as the whispers crescendoed into a deafening roar. "Uncover the truth," the voice echoed, drowning him in despair. In that moment, he realized the weight of the journey ahead of him. What awaited? Below would reveal not just the truth of Annabelle and the child but perhaps the truth about himself. What horrors would he uncover in the depths of the forgotten? Cold air sliced through the basement as Carl moved deeper into the murky shadows. His flashlight beam flickered like a dying firefly, dancing across the cracked walls where moisture pooled ominously. The whispers enveloped him again, tighter this time, a chorus of grief echoing through the damp chamber. He pressed on, heart racing as he strained to listen over the unsettling symphony of sorrow. Annabelle, the name danced on his tongue, its bittersweet taste a reminder of something lost. But what was it? Why did it haunt him? Each step felt like an act of defiance against the oppressive weight of the darkness. The silence would just not let go. With every slant of the beam, he shadowed fragmented memories, each trophy and poster peeling from the walls like reminders of lives that once were. He stumbled upon debris littering the floor, a mound of crumpled papers, torn photographs. He knelt, his heart hammering against his chest. The faint glow from his phone illuminated a photo, yellowed with age, creased around the edges. He squinted at the faces, children smiling, arms slung around one another. Annabelle was there, a bright-eyed girl with unruly curls and a laughter that seemed to echo from the past. "What happened to you?" he murmured, the chill in the air wrapping tighter around him, almost as if it were clamoring for an answer too. Suddenly, an icy draft swept through the space, carrying a faint sound music. It was soft, haunting, and beautiful yet filled with an insidious ache. Carl's instincts kicked in, his feet moving before his mind could catch up. The sound drew him deeper, compelling him to follow as if the very air implored him to listen. A hallway loomed ahead, barely lit, with half-open doors gaping like hungry mouths. He glanced back at the way he came, but the path was now swallowed by darkness, fading into the memory of light. There was no turning back. Carl, the familiar voice called again, flickering on the edge of recognition. It trembled with desperation, resonating with layers of yearning and terror. "Find me, who are you?" he shouted, frustration spilling over. The music grew louder as though responding to his plea, infusing the air with a sense of urgency that twisted his stomach into knots. Through the crack of an open door, a faint glow beckoned. He stepped cautiously inside, absorbing the scene before him. A tattered toy box sat in one corner, dust dancing in the forlorn light. Carl's heart raced, the name Annabelle danced around his mind like a wildfire. He inched closer. A faint sound, laughter. Or was it a distant echo of the music? His fingers grazed the wood, a gnawing sensation creeping up his spine as if he was about to disturb something sleeping long and hard. "Open it," a voice echoed from within, almost a sigh, laced with shadows that seemed to pulse as he hesitated. Sweat trickled down the side of his face. What awaited beyond the lid? Would he unleash the truths buried beneath years of sorrow? He had to know. It was no longer a choice, it was a compulsion, a thread pulling him toward a fate he could not escape. With trembling hands, he pried open the lid, the sound of old wood creaking under pressure setting his teeth on edge. Darkness hung around the box like a shroud, but inside a glimmer of silver caught his eye. And then he saw it, the music box, intricately carved, resting amidst trinkets that whispered stories from the past. But before he could lift it, a sudden gust of frigid air surged around him, slamming the door shut. Carl's breath hitched, the music abruptly stopped, plunging him into a suffocating silence. "What have you done?" The voice returned, deeper, echoing with a haunting finality as shadows swirled around him, filling every crevice. He was no longer alone. The spirits converged in a desperate frenzy, and an overwhelming realization crashed over him. This wasn't just about Annabelle or the lost children. It was about their legacy, a plea he wasn't equipped to carry. Carl clenched the edges of the box. In that moment, the choice before him crystallized like ice water through his veins. Would he uncover the truth and face the abyss? Or would he flee from the darkness and allow this haunting to continue, unchallenged? Then the whispers crescendoed into a wailing storm, pulling him down into the depths as he clutched the music box, shadows clawing at his legs, dragging him into their depths. What dark revelation lay hidden within the box, waiting for the one brave enough or foolish enough to unlock it? The shadows lunged like hungry beasts, tendrils of darkness spiraling around Carl's legs, tugging him down into the void. Panic surged through him, raw and electric. He could feel the cold wrapping around his throat, squeezing tightly as if demanding submission. "No!" he shouted, desperation flooding his voice. He gripped the edges of the music box fiercely, determined not to be pulled under. The whispers morphed into a chaotic cacophony that resonated deep within his skull. They were angry now, their sorrow twisted into a demanding fury that rattled his bones. "Carl! Annabelle needs you, you have to save her." The voice, once haunting, now sounded like a plea, fraying at the edges. He couldn't tell if it was real or a figment of the madness coiling around him. The incessant wailing of lost souls melded with the music that had once lured him, an intoxicating blend of beauty and horror that reverberated through his very core. With an adrenaline-fueled resolve, he yanked the music box from its resting place and slammed it shut, silencing the chaotic symphony. The shadows recoiled slightly, but he could feel their presence undeterred, thrumming like an impending storm. "Find me," the voice, now an urgent whisper, echoed in his ears. It was more than a summon, it was a demand, an expectation almost. The basement shifted around him, and a dim light flickered from the far end of the hallway. It beckoned like a lighthouse in a tumultuous night, an escape he desperately sought. He forced his legs to move, stumbling forward as the pressure of unseen hands tightened around him, clutching at his shirt and pulling him backward. "Get off me!" he growled, swinging an arm to free himself from the grasping shadows. The connection broke, but at a cost. In his struggle, the music box slipped from his fingers, tumbling to the ground with a crash that reverberated, breaking through the haze, or so he hoped. He dared a glance back. The box lay open, its intricate carvings glowing with an ethereal light that seemed to pulse in rhythm with the whispers. They intensified, urging him to return. But the glowing doorway promised more than echoes of the past, perhaps a sliver of hope that he dashed towards the light, fear fueling his every step. To the side, a door stood ajar, its splintered edges framing an unmistakable shadow and outline of a child. His heart pounded as he approached, breath hitching in his throat. Was it Annabelle? A sense of longing enveloped him, raw and unyielding. Carl. The shadowed figure swayed, the voice soft yet chilling, both familiar and foreign. Help me, he reached out, terror swirling inside a mix of excitement and dread. Annabelle? The name left his lips in a strangled whisper. The figure stepped closer, the light illuminating her face. It was her, those same bright eyes, that same wild hair. But the joy that should have filled Carl crumbled as he surveyed the hollowness in her smile, the darkness lurking just beyond her. Please help me. The words dripped with an underlying grief that set his teeth on edge. It was not a plea for rescue but an invitation into a deeper darkness. The music box vibrated against the floor, emanating soft notes as if crying out for attention. Carl's instinct screamed, it felt like a trap. But the gaze of Annabelle drew him in, a sinister pull that stoked the embers of his hope. Where are we? He managed to ask, forcing his voice to break through the encroaching dread. Here, she whispered, her gaze flickering toward the dark beyond. You must choose. Open the box or forget. With horror gripping his heart, he realized the truth hidden in her words. The choice wasn't just about saving Annabelle, it was about confronting the entire nightmare, deciding between the haunting past or a perpetual unknowing. As he stood there, trapped between worlds, Carl felt the temperature drop further, a frigid breath against his neck. The voices returned, sharper, full of urgency. Time was running out. Could he embrace the darkness to rescue the girl he barely knew or succumb to the whispers forever? The air crackled with tension as Carl took a deep breath, clutching the music box with renewed resolve, knowing his next move could change everything. What truth would he unearth when he finally dared to open the box fully? The music box felt heavy in Carl's hands, a paradoxical weight of dread and determination. Shadows writhed at the edge of his vision, whispering secrets he dared not comprehend. The flickering light ahead pulsed like a heartbeat, urging him closer, while Annabelle stood before him, her figure steeped in uncertainty. Open it. Her voice rose, a haunting echo in his mind. You don't understand what they're capable of. If you don't, it will all be for nothing. A chill crawled up Carl's spine. He stared into her eyes, searching for the little girl he knew. But the distance in her gaze felt infinite. As if she were a mirage, shifting between desire and despair. Annabelle, he croaked, grounding himself in the only truth he trusted. I can't just put my faith in a shadow. The music box vibrated again, a soft melodic hum breaking the oppressive silence. It seemed to pulse, as if waiting for him to make a choice. The shadows lurked closer, fingers of darkness curling around his ankles, pulling him towards the void behind. Down here, Carl. Annabelle pointed into the darkness. You have to see what they've hidden. The floor trembled beneath him. A low growl emanated from the depths, shaking the walls. The shadows reacted, roaring in a cacophony of rage and hunger. Carl stumbled backward, an urgent pulse within him screaming to flee. But he couldn't abandon her. What if it's a trap? He shouted, the frantic edge of his voice slicing through the noise. If I open it, what happens? She stepped forward, her expression shifting to something more sinister, a grin mixed with sorrow. What's worse than the shadows that haunt us? The secrets we keep. His heart raced. Each second felt like an eternity wrapped in horror. The ground beneath him shifted, the room collapsing into uncertainty. He felt the cold edges of the darkness creeping closer, smelling of ash and anguish. Please, Annabelle's voice softened, almost a whisper, you have to make a choice. Carl's grip tightened on the music box. This wasn't about her anymore. It was about his life, his sanity. Deep within, he could feel the choice gnawing, a gnawing like the shadows clutching at him. Would he risk it all to unveil the truth? With one final surge of bravery, he clenched his jaw and threw the box open. The room exploded with sound. A torrent of music flooded out, drowning the whispers and growls at once. Bright light poured from the box, spilling into the shadows, illuminating horrors long hidden. Faces twisted in fear, silhouettes of people who had once lived, lost souls trapped beyond the veil. Time screeched to a halt. Annabelle's face transformed as the light cast out the shadows. Her hollow smile faded, replaced with genuine fear. "No. Close it. You have to," but it was too late. The echoes of agony surged forward, washing over Carl like a wave. As figures materialized from the dark, the realization hit him with a gut-wrenching force. Annabelle wasn't the only one trapped here. With each note that rang out, more souls were revealed. Each face bore witness to a tragic story, a fate entwined with his own. The laughter of children echoed alongside screams of despair, a dichotomy that twisted his stomach. He had awakened something terrible, and now there was no going back. Carl's breath caught in his throat as the shadows coiled tighter, consuming the light. The music box flickered, growing fainter, but still, he couldn't tear his gaze away from the faces woven into the tapestry of despair. That he was caught, suspended between salvation and condemnation, with nowhere to run. Then, a figure stepped forward, one he recognized, the small boy from before, eyes wide with terror. "You have to find us, Carl," he yelled over the chaos. Together the thunder of swirling darkness threatened to swallow him whole. Carl clenched his fists, the ground rattling violently beneath him. It wasn't just Annabelle he needed to save. It was everyone trapped in this realm, bound by the music's curse. With a heart full of desperation, Carl shouted, "What do I do?" The boy's face contorted. "Find the last note. It will free us, but it will change everything." The words hung in the air, heavy with dread and promise, as the shadows surged forth, an overwhelming tide. What last note would lead to freedom or devastation? The choice was shaping into something he could hardly comprehend. The cacophony of sound swirled around Carl like a storm, crashing over him with relentless force. The music from the box grew louder, turning into a howling symphony of sorrow that reverberated off the walls. He could no longer see Annabelle, all that remained was the boy, his desperate plea echoing in Carl's mind. "Find the last note." Panic surged through Carl as he fought to steady himself against the onslaught of despairing cries and echoing laughter. The faces of the lost flickered in and out of the light, their expressions a blend of pleading and anguish. Shadows danced between them, swirling like smoke, wrapping around the souls who prowled this nightmare. Together the boy shouted again, his small frame nearly swallowed by the darkness. "You can't do this alone." Carl opened his mouth to shout back, but no sound came. He was trapped, smothered by the weight of others' hopelessness. He forced himself to focus, narrowing his thoughts. There had to be a way out. The last note. A glimmer in the mass of lost souls caught his eye, a flicker of motion, a faint shimmer just beyond the void. With a resolute breath, Carl pushed through the shadows, stumbling against unseen forces that clawed at him, desperate to reclaim him into their depths. "Where?" he gasped, every step sending jolts of terror through his body. But there was no answer, just more screams, more laughter, weaving a wicked tapestry of madness. The boy's voice, almost lost now, reverberated in Carl's mind like a beacon, urging him on. He reached out, grasping at the drifting faces, searching for the connection that would liberate them all. Each time he tried to touch one, they flinched away, as if terrified of his grasp. The shadows recoiled, pulling back only slightly, sensing his determination. "If it changes everything," he murmured to himself. His heart pounded in his chest. Did he want to take that risk? But what choice did he have? He could no longer stand idle, not while the cries of the damned echoed in his ears. He felt a sudden surge of energy, a pulse within the music that resonated against his skin. In that moment, the despair transformed into something sharper: hope, mixed with undeniable terror. Somewhere out there, hidden amid the chaos, was the last note. Then without warning, the music box shrieked, notes piercing through the air like shards of glass. Carl winced, bracing himself as a wall of the darkness surged forth, threatening to engulf him completely. "No!" he shouted instinctively, his voice cutting through the din. The shadows froze, an eerie stillness crashing down. In that brief silence, the boy's voice whispered inside Carl's mind. Follow the light. Before he could comprehend the meaning, Carl saw something: a beam, brilliantly bright, arcing above him. Shining like a lighthouse guiding him home, it beckoned him. He blinked, vision sharpening. The faces twisted in fear, their eyes wide with horror, but in that moment, he only saw the light and ran toward it, colliding with the force of the shadows. The light surged brighter. It pushed against the darkness, forcing it to recoil. "You will not take him!" he screamed, channeling every ounce of fear and fury. It exploded outward like fireworks, scattering the shadows like leaves in the wind, but then, the world lurched like a ship in stormy seas. The music box began to close, the melody warping, distorting into an agonizing wail. He felt the grip of the lost souls tightening, pulling at him from all sides. "Help us, Carl! Find the last note!" they cried in unison, their voices a haunting chorus. Desperation clawed at him, but he steadied himself against the roar of chaotic melodies. His heart raced as he realized what he had to do. "Where is the last note?" he begged, his voice breaking through the din. The answer skated through the cacophony, barely a whisper: "The one you must confront." Suddenly, shadows flared around him, coalescing into a nightmarish form. It towered over him, a monstrous figure draped in darkness, its eyes glowing like molten coal. Carl staggered back, instincts screaming at him to flee. But he couldn't. He wouldn't let their suffering be in vain. With every ounce of willpower, he stood his ground. "Show me!" he roared, challenging the embodiment of dread. The shadows coiled tighter, but he refused to be consumed. It was time to confront not only the darkness within but to seek the last note, whatever cost it would demand. Then, through the chaos, just as the music box emitted one final piercing note, the figure lunged. Carl braced himself, ready to face whatever horror awaited him in his desperate mission for truth. What form would this confrontation take? And would it spell freedom or doom? Time snapped, waiting for his next move. The shadow lunged, a swirling mass of ink and terror, its eyes burning into Carl's soul like smoldering embers. He felt the floor beneath him tremble as it surged forward, the air thickening like molasses. "Show me what you hide!" Carl screamed, forcing the words out of his throat, heart hammering against his ribcage. He didn't know if he had the strength or courage to face the abyss, but surrender was not an option. The darkness froze mid-lunge, as if testing the weight of his challenge. An unsettling stillness enveloped the room, enveloped Carl like a shroud. He stood his ground, bracing for whatever the shadow could unleash. In a heartbeat, the grotesque figure warped, shifting and flickering like a faulty light bulb. Faces boiled to the surface, twisted, tortured expressions pleading for relief. Carl's breath quickened. The music box's wail harmonized with their unearthly cries, a sorrowful serenade that threatened to overwhelm him. "Help them!" the boy's voice pierced through the cacophony, urging him. With desperation coursing through his veins, Carl pressed forward, eyes never leaving those molten orbs. "What must I do?" he barked, the shadows gathering their strength around him, eager to pull him into their depths. The creature loomed closer, freezing Carl in place with its chilling gaze. Suddenly, a voice resonated from the core of the darkness, deep and guttural. "To find the last note, you must become that which you fear. Only then will you hear it." Confusion twisted in Carl's mind. Become what he feared. The thought was monstrous, alien. Yet, every heartbeat echoed with the undeniable knowledge that the last note was within reach, just beyond that dark veil. "Face your truth," the voice urged again, a haunting echo that reverberated through his bones. The shadows tightened around him, compressing his chest and drawing the air from his lungs. Carl steeled himself, diving into the thought like a lifeline tossed into turbulent waters. What did he fear? Failure? Loss? The guilt of inaction? It all crashed over him, overwhelming his senses. Closing his eyes, he allowed his mind to drift into the memories, the faces of those he couldn't save, the whispers of guilt that followed him like shadows of his own. No more, he mouthed, feeling the weight of each expression cascade over him, feeling his body tremble in acceptance. He released the fear, pouring it into the darkness surrounding him. The cacophony shifted, the music box vibrating against a new frequency. He could hear a pattern emerging beneath the layered terror, a melody, distorted yet familiar, that echoed within him. The figure before him shimmered, then surged and morphed, revealing the outlines of those lost souls he had sensed all along. Confronting their anguish, Carl felt a flood of energy envelop him, igniting as he leaned into that fear. Together he cried, a fervent vow, the shadows quivering as their forms began to blur like mist. The boy's voice emerged stronger, clearer. Find it. Carl felt it pulse in his chest, the truth drumming against his heart. The last note was not simply a sound, it was forgiveness, a release from guilt. Gathering his courage, he thrust his hands toward the spectral figure. I will find it. Show me the last note. The darkness swirled angrily, but a light flickered in response. It surged forward, a chorus of whispers, once imprisoned, now breaking free. Just as the light expanded, illuminating the room, everything lurched. Shadows howled, attempting to cling to him, and Carl felt a tug, a desperate yearning to pull him back into the void. What is happening? He cried, struggling against the overwhelming force. In that moment of chaos, he glimpsed a swirling path illuminated by the flickering light. Hope ignited. He was not lost, he was uncovering. He was about to grasp what had hidden from him all along. Racing toward the light, Carl felt the shadows try to take hold. The cacophony of the music box intensified, throwing discordant notes like daggers. Would he seize the last note? The shadows writhed, twisting around his form, the monstrous figure still lurking in the depths. He was close, but could he truly confront everything that the last note demanded of him? As the light reached out, illuminating the path ahead, the question lingered: would he succumb to the darkness, or could he break free? The music shifted one more time, echoing a chilling promise. All he needed was to choose. The light surged, blindingly bright, wrapping Carl in a cocoon of warmth and music that resonated deep within him. Shadows writhed and shrieked, their cries mingling with the notes of the music box, creating a discordant symphony that felt like it would rip the air apart. His choice loomed ahead, an invisible threshold that threatened to pull him in multiple directions. Stay focused. He shouted into the swirling chaos, his voice cracking. The flickering light felt almost sentient, urging him forward, and yet the shadows clawed desperately at his ankles, their icy fingers latching on, attempting to drag him into their abyss. With every labored breath, Carl summoned his courage. What do you want from me? He barked, but the darkness recoiled in response, shifting and reshaping itself. The faces of the lost souls twisted in agony, their mouths moving silently, as if trying to convey a message he couldn't quite hear. The boy's voice came again, a haunting echo filled with urgency. You have to remember it's in the past, unlock it. Snapshots flooded Carl's mind, moments of choices made in fear, of loss that had painted his soul in shadows. Families he couldn't save during those freak accidents, tears he hadn't wiped away, and distant screams that haunted his nights. No more regret, he whispered, clarity beginning to slice through the fog of chaos. He locked onto the faces, the pain mingling with his own. Each face was a reminder of everything he tried to bury. As his heart raced, Carl could feel the heat of resentment boiling up within him. I will not let it control me. He cried out. The light quivered, and for an instant, it pulsed in rhythm with his heartbeat, as if responding to his defiance. Suddenly, the music box emitted a haunting note, clear amid the cacophony, like a lighthouse cutting through a storm. It resonated deep in his chest, reverberating against everything he held on to. The more he focused, the more the darkness swayed uneasily, as if it could sense his resolve. "Come with me." Carl reached out, hands extended toward the glowing path. "Embrace your pain. We will transcend this nightmare together." With those words, the souls turned toward him, their forms glowing faintly. It was no longer just him against the shadow, it became a collective. They began to shine brighter, the brightness breaking through the suffocating murk. As the warmth enveloped him, he felt the guilt dissipate, pushed away by an overpowering sense of relief, but just as all seemed to align, the howling intensified. The shadow twisted back violently, morphing into a singular towering figure, its eyes blazing like two burning coals. "You think you can escape? You are me. You cannot sever the bond." Panic surged within Carl, his heart pounding with the rhythm of drums. "No. I can rise above this," he screamed, willing himself to break free from the suffocating chains of his past. The warmth enveloped him, now contrasted by the frigid reality of the beast looming closer, its breath cold as the grave. "Face the truth, or be consumed." The shadow roared, stretching its jagged claws toward him. The air crackled with malevolence, and Carl felt weight and pressure bearing down on him, desperation clawing at his insides. He was teetering on the edge, light and dark, hope and despair. Carl took a stealing breath, plunging into the flood of memories again. "You do not control me." He roared into the face of the abyss, exuding defiance. "I embrace my mistakes. I accept my guilt." As those words left his mouth, the barrier began to crack, a sliver of light bursting free, but at that moment, a violent cold swept through him like an icy breath. A whisper rippled in the air. "You can't change what you've done." The beast lunged forward, teeth bared, ready to swallow him whole, eyes brimming with an insatiable hunger. Could he bridge the gap between the light and that ravenous darkness? Would he embrace the truth and, in doing so, find the last note? As he braced for impact, the question hung heavy in the air, waiting for an answer. Carl faced the abyss, breathless as the shadow surged toward him, a dark wave ready to drown him. "You do not control me." His voice thundered, filled with resilience born from desperation. The darkness twisted ominously, but within it lay the spark of determination, beckoning him through the chaos. "I will uncover the last note," he declared, galvanizing himself with certainty that felt like armor. He reached deep within, embracing memories, each misstep, every loss laid bare like a map guiding him home. Memories of laughter, of love, and of sorrow twisted together, a tapestry of his life that suddenly felt more than burden. It was strength. It was connection. The music from the box surged, a flowing melody of sorrow and hope that intertwined with the air. The monstrous figure hesitated, recoiling just slightly as if sensing the shift within Carl. "You can't change who you are. You'll always be lost." The shadow snarled. But Carl wasn't he lost, he was found in the multitude of shared pain. "Yes, I made mistakes," Carl shouted, his resolve coursing through him. "But that is not who I am. I will not deny my truth." With each word, the ground trembled as light pierced through the dense dark. He felt their fear and anger, all the souls waiting, trapped in their own memories. "We are not alone. We fight together." A faint glimmer flared within him, igniting, a surge of light rising within the eternal clutches of shadow. The faces coalesced, shimmering, a collective pulse of desperate hope wrapping around him. "We need you, Carl. Find the last note." The boy's voice beat like thunder in his ears, urging him forward, a beacon through the pain. The light intensified, flooding the room in brilliant hues that twisted the very fabric of despair before him. He stretched his fingers, seeking to grasp that ethereal energy swirling around him. "I'm coming for you," he roared, not just to the shadow but to the sorrow of souls lost in silence. With fierce determination, Carl launched himself toward the heart of the darkness, feeling the gravitational pull of the abyss intertwine with the shimmering light that fought to free them all. Voices merged into a single resolve, yelling, urging him on. Together. They shouted, and he felt their energy surge with him, buoying him against the maelstrom. The shadow lunged, a voracious maw tearing through the space between them, but Carl was ready. Channeling everything he felt, he surged forward, fists clenched around hope and remorse. "I accept you," he screamed, the words igniting fire within, illuminating every painful moment, transforming them from shackles into wings. Suddenly, the music from the box hit a high, piercing note, its essence entwining with Carl as he completed his transformation. "Not just me, all of us." With a deep breath, he opened his heart wide, willing light to flood into every corner of darkness around him. As he did, a blinding flash erupted from the music box, cascading through the shadows like sunlight breaking dawn upon a stormy night. The shadows screamed, faces twisted, and then exploded into a million glowing fragments of memories, scattering like a flock of startled birds. The monster shrieked in agony, its form distorting and convulsing as it fragmented into wisps of darkness. It fell away, absorbing the shadows until all that remained was a flickering hint of what had been. Light filled every inch of the basement, illuminating the sorrowful figures anew. They stood, free yet trembling, hovering in the newfound warmth of hope. Carl, a familiar whisper floated to him, soft as a summer breeze. The last remnants of darkness ebbed, revealing Annabelle, her face now bright with clarity. "You did it. You listened and unlocked the truth." He stepped forward slowly, the pain that had once constricted his chest now relinquishing itself. "You're free," his voice trembled. "But what about the children?" Their forms flickered with gratitude, relief washing over them like a cleansing tide. "We're here, we're free at last," the boy reassured, his smile now real and vibrant against the backdrop of sorrow woven into their history. "You helped release us." Carl breathed deeply as they began to glow, lifting gently off the ground. "Thank you for finding us." Annabelle's voice drifted like the whisper of the wind, her spirit taking flight. With one final brilliance, the remnants of shadows dissipated, leaving only a warmth that pulsed through Carl's chest, a radiant embrace of healing light. As he watched the spirit surge upward, ascending into radiance, Carl felt a profound sense of peace settle over him. The music box lay quietly, its last note hanging ecstatically in the air. It had done its duty, melting the echoes of the past into forgiveness, creating a bridge to freedom both for the lost and for him. Carl turned, the basement now transformed into a sanctuary of light. He stepped back into the night, heart heavy with hope and healing but buoyed by grace. As he walked toward the exit, he felt a lightness in his step, the burdens of loss lifting, the scars reshaping. Finally, he was ready to embrace the dawn and the life waiting beyond the haunting halls. Before he stepped outside, Carl whispered into the emptiness, "Thank you." Now it was his turn to live for himself, for his daughter, and for all the shadows that were finally free. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel immediately so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this intense ending. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Only true fans understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.